The Janitor by Jonathan Wilson. 1. Jayden vacuumed the halls of Mapleview Jr. High each afternoon following the final bell. He would walk 1 block from his high school and arrive at 3:55 with just enough time to eat an ice cream sandwich from the freezer before his shift. Today, however, he ran since it had been raining up a storm. He was a tall, lanky kid with short brown hair and had 1 tattoo on the back of his neck in the shape of a little sun. He watched with distasteful eyes as Keegan and Jamie entered the office, immediately swiveling in their chairs as they sat down. They were both a bit younger than him. Keegan had blonde hair, blue eyes, and was thick-boned as he referred to himself whenever Jamie called him out about his weight. Jamie was a short Asian kid with black hair and round cheeks. Jayden looked at them and thought about all the ways they would suck at their jobs today. Their work ethic showed that they were there only for the paycheck, always stopping to talk, taking long breaks, scrolling away on their phones while sitting on top of desks they should have been scrubbing. As far as most of the janitorial work, Jayden had that covered. He always worked extra hard to compensate for their lack of contribution. Jayden tried his best to convince himself that it was okay. Everyone is lazy at times, and maybe they'll come around. However, this mindset was slowly starting to drift away, as it seemed more and more that Jayden's hard work was fueled by a growing animosity towards them. He found himself doing the extra work out of spite, hoping they felt guilty for leaving all this work for him. While he did at times feel bad for harboring all this grief, Jayden actually kept it this way. Keegan and Jamie knew that no matter how little effort they put in, the work would get done, whether they helped out or not. Unbeknownst to Jayden, the two had tested this out. One day, they made a classroom even messier than they found it, ripping up papers into tiny pieces under desks, dumping out the pencil sharpener onto the carpet, and drawing funny cartoons on the whiteboards. And sure enough, by the end of the day, the room was spotless. They didn't quite know how he got it all done each day, but it wasn't like Jayden ever talked to them anyways. Not like they wanted to. He only gave them sinister stares from across the hall, which creeped them out. They even heard him muttering swears under his breath from around the corner when he didn't know they were there. Finally, Jayden snapped. It was now 1 hour into his shift, and the boss asked him to clean the little glass-encased mudrooms on all 4 entryways into the school. It was extremely messy that day since all the students had tracked in mud from the rain. Scowling and muttering curses under his breath, the whine of the vacuum overpowered any chance of being heard. He vigorously cleaned up the mud with the hose. He slammed the long metal tube down on the mud, which only pounded down deeper into the carpet. His back hurt from the weight of the vacuum, and as he thought of the dirty classrooms that were waiting for him to clean, he felt even more upset, now slamming the metal down harder and harder until it bent. He let out a loud scream in defeat. Then he looked down and saw little cobwebs lining the outer edges of the floor. He wondered how he had missed this, but it was no surprise because of how long it must have been since anyone cleaned these sections of the school. With a smiling scowl, Jayden slammed the metal nozzle into the largest corner of the cobwebs. Spiders scattered everywhere as he brought down the vacuum head again and again on the family of them. He went back and forth furiously until all of them had disappeared, being sucked into the black hole he carried on his back. He got every last one of them. Jayden had a satisfied smile on his face. 2. The next day, the sun rose bright in the sky, and Jayden felt lighter. It was like something released, a deep aggression that had been freed from within. That day, He no longer found fault in his coworkers' idle behavior. He whistled while he vacuumed. He went above and beyond without complaint. 2 days had passed since he had begun a transformation. Everyone liked him better as he became friendly. When people talked to him, he actually took out his AirPods and had a conversation. When doing extra work, he would go up to his coworkers and ask them to help him out. He was vacuuming the carpet steps in the foyer, listening to The Killers, when he felt a ting on the back of his neck, which he immediately swatted at without any thought, continuing to vacuum. Then he felt another, almost like a bite. He saw something out of the corner of his eye, and sure enough, on his shoulder was a spider. He dropped the vacuum hose and began frantically brushing at his arms. He got it off and, like all the rest, vacuumed it up. His mother was the first to notice them. Jayden had only felt a few at first, but still brushed it off as nothing. "Jayden, what's on your neck?" his mother exclaimed. "It's nothing," he replied. Red dots covered the back of Jayden's neck. Upon his mother's further inspection, they seemed to be tiny white dots with 2 red marks inside each of them. Coincidentally enough, these were all inside the center of his little sun tattoo. They didn't go away like Jayden insisted they would. They only got worse. Each of them had swelled up to the size of a quarter. The 2 red dots on each of them started to bleed and eventually formed a bumpy, fibrous texture he would pick at, making it scab worse. He didn't want to shower since any contact with water sent searing jolts of pain down his neck. 3. His anger returned. It was no gradual change, but immediate and extreme. He would lash out at his mom. He would yell at his dad. And while he had never before sworn at his coworkers, now he would cuss them out to their face. During one of these episodes, the veins on his neck bulged, sending blood squirting out the holes in the back of his neck. His coworkers got a big white bandage and wrapped his wound with it. Immediately, red spots dotted the white cloth, pus beginning to leak out. He insisted that he stay for the rest of his shift. He was assigned that same spot in the little glass-encased mudrooms on all 4 entryways into the school. Jayden was vacuuming, sweating, and swearing like a sailor as he viciously slammed the nozzle against the ground again and again. In his rage, he brought the nozzle down against the glass window, shattering it. Then he began punching it with his hands, and now banging on it with his head, blood leaking down his forehead and into his eyes. The pus that had saturated his bandages began to pop, and amidst all the commotion, it fell off. Jayden desperately tried to free himself from the glass, cutting himself even more in the process. The vacuum hit the floor, and when it did, the lid popped off, exposing what had been incubating within for the past few days. Thick, white cobwebs caked the inside of the vacuum. Jayden screamed out in horror as he saw what had been revealed. He couldn't help but watch in agonizing pain and anguish as hundreds of little black spiders crawled their way out and began their new life, skittering in his direction. They were going up his legs. He could feel them in his shirt and on his body. They had one destination. They were making their way to the holes in the back of his neck. It was time to feast on the delicious juices oozing out of him. They were going to eat, going to rest, going home to stay.